See if my next guest, Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports NBA, can remember who was wearing the Reebok pumps at the dunk contest. What's going on, Keith?
Hey, man, how are you? It was D. Brown.
There you go.
From the Boston Celtics. Yeah, I remember that well.
I went out and got Reebok pumps immediately. They were the coolest thing I think I ever saw. The Reebok pump. We got to bring. Then they got really the black ones with the orange basketball were the best. Then they got a little crazy. They started doing all sorts of looks, but the original Reebok pumps, those things were unbelievable. We were kind of talking about different sports phenomenons before we get into this. Now, I don't know how old you are, Keith, but the UNLV Running Rebels. Were you around for that?
I was, yeah. That was when I was growing up as a kid, yep.
So I can't remember. Like, to me, they were so bad. I couldn't even imagine them in today's day. I think today they would almost be minimized by social media. That's how big they were, that before social media, you stayed up to watch that team. That's how big of an impact they had.
Yeah, I was an East Coast kid growing up in Boston, and I used to tape whenever they showed up on ESPN. I put a tape in the VCR, programmed the VCR, and then set it to record, so to record their games at night, because it was rare that I ever was going to be able to see them live, just because that team was so much fun. I mean, they used to blow people out of the gym. Their games weren't even close, and a lot of trash talk and flying up and down the floor. I love that.
They were playing teams you never heard of before at that time. I mean, it was like UNLV Pepperdine. All right, I don't care. Let's watch this thing. I mean, they were just unbelievable. But there were some good times. And then, of course, I'll get your opinion on the Jordan years. The 6 championships, the 3, then he goes away, then he comes back, and how you compare that 6-year run, which was broken up, to what the Warriors are doing right now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with that Jordan team, what you had there was, whereas the Warriors for the bulk of this run, they had faced up until this year, they had faced LeBron James, who the years where Kyrie Irving was healthy, that was a little bit of a different team, but the other years it felt like they were facing a one-man gang, where when you had Jordan, it felt like they were going against great teams every year, whether it was Drexler and the Trailblazers, or Magic and the Lakers, or Barkley and the Suns, and then those great Sonics and Jazz teams when they got there. So that's the only difference, but both great within their own right. The one thing that those both teams will always have is they never lost one in that period of play.
Yeah, which puts them way above everybody else in my mind, is that no one ever beat them when they got there. Keith Smith is with us. I think there are the scenarios that could arise from this series, which one, I think they're all far-fetched, Keith, but which one is more far-fetched? Number one, Toronto to win this in 6 would have to win in Oakland. This would be a 4th straight win for them in Golden State. They won there in the regular season. They would have to have said, we won in Oakland 4 straight times. All right, that's 1. 2, for Golden State to win, they would have to win in Toronto 3 times. They would go 3-1 in Toronto to be called champions. Or 3, Toronto beats the Warriors in a Game 7. Which of those? They all seem far-fetched. Which is most far-fetched?
I think the most far-fetched is the Raptors winning Game 6 in Oakland. I just can't see that. I think the Warriors will get that win and force a Game 7. And then once you get to Game 7, obviously those are toss-ups. That's when, you generally get some great player doesn't show up, some, relatively lesser player, role player, has the game of his life. Weird things happen in Game 7 all the time. So I think that's where you're looking at it as, that's far more likely to me than seeing the Raptors win that game in Oakland tomorrow night.
Yeah, and then you got Golden State. I mean, if they win tomorrow night in Game 6, that means they would have to beat Toronto 3 straight times and then win for a 3rd time in Toronto. I mean, I can't talk myself into any of these scenarios.
Yeah, it's been a weird finals for a lot of reasons, not just, the injuries and then all the other things, but the fact that neither team's hold and serve on their home court. And it's kind of funny when you look at it as the Raptors obviously put a big emphasis on pushing to be better than the Warriors. They knew they weren't going to catch the Bucks, but we heard it over and over again that they wanted to have a better record than the Warriors so that they would be at home when it mattered in the finals if they both got there. And that's what's happened. And now it doesn't matter either way. They're both just going out there and playing. So, which is kind of refreshing because you're just getting a sense of the better team is winning without a lot of extra stuff involved.
Yeah, and there's so many other things to dive into on this series. All right, so the other night you get KD back. He's playing unbelievable, and then obviously, sadly, he goes down and gets hurt. Do the Warriors have enough without him? Have we seen enough of this series to make the assertion that they don't? Or did the way they held off Toronto, went down, and then came back say, you know what, the Warriors are still the better team, and they have enough to win 2 in a row here?
Yeah, I think they do have enough. I don't know that they're going to pull that off, but I think they do have enough, and part of that comes in the great equalizer of three-point shooting between Curry and Thompson. Those two guys, it's not at all far-fetched to see them making 23-pointers between the two of them in a game, and then all of a sudden, that you're going to be in a tight game no matter what if that happens. So I think those two guys' individual brilliance combined with the fact that Draymond Green is playing at such a ridiculously high level on both ends of the court, really this entire series, that's going to be big. The one thing is Draymond's got to keep his temper in check in Game 6 because one more technical and he's suspended for Game 7, which that'd be a story that I know for one I have no interest in covering.
Keith Smith was with us. All right, without Durant, obviously, you goes back to Curry as the guy and Clay, who missed a game and they didn't win that game, and then he came back and they win, and then those two guys were pretty good in the last game. For them, going forward here with those two guys, and you mentioned Draymond, Toronto on the other side, what have they been able to do in this series when they've won games that some people would say, okay, like I watched the series and say, okay, Steph, Clay, Draymond, they've won a championship. We know they're great. But right now, without Durant, it seems that Toronto had figured something out. What do they need to get back in Game 6 that they lost in Game 5?
Maybe guys beyond Kawhi Leonard to step up. He's been there every single game. This has really been their story the entirety of the playoffs. He's there every night. It's when they get that second and third guy to step up and have a big game, that's when they're really great. Generally, that's Kyle Lowry is the number one guy involved there. But whether then that third guy is Pascal Siakam, it's been Danny Green, it's been Fred VanVleet, it's been both Ibaka and Gasol. If they can just get two more guys to step up and give them good games, it doesn't have to necessarily be scoring-wise, but just consistent effort on both ends of the court, that makes things a lot easier on them because otherwise it puts really too much on Kawhi's shoulders to try and do it all by himself.
Obviously, Kawhi is the guy, and he's there. And in this matchup, who's the best number 2 guy when you look strictly at, because you could pick out a different guy every night. Lowry, Ibaka had the big game, Siakam's had a big game, Gasol had a big game one. But which guy matches up? Is the matchup problem that is the candidate to be that second guy?
Yeah, oddly enough, I think it's Marc Gasol because the Warriors have had a lot of trouble with him. What ends up happening is if Cousins is out there, Gasol hangs out around the perimeter, and he's either a shooter or a distributor. And Cousins isn't, at this point in his recovery, and really at no point in his career has he been great about getting out on the opposing big. Then on the flip side, if they go with a guy like Kevon Looney, that's when you see Gasol get down in the post. Siakam gets kind of neutralized by Green to some extent. And then Lowry is offset by Curry. The rest of the guys, it's Thompson's there as well. So what you end up happening there is you really need Marc Gasol to be really consistent effort and effort's not really fair because the effort's always there. You need a consistent level of production from him on the offensive end of the floor, especially because he's always good defensively. But if you can get anything offensively out of him, it just makes life so much easier for the Raptors.
Keith Smith with us. We're looking at Game 6 tomorrow night, and of course, in Game 5, Kawhi had that last shot opportunity. He kind of laughed it off. He said, "Look, I had two guys on me there," and he passes off to VanVleet. Forget him not taking the shot. I'm not criticizing that, but did you think he got a late start on that shot? Because I was waiting for him to have a similar shot that he pulled off against Orlando, and obviously the shot he had against Philly where he kind of veered off to the right, found his spot on the baseline there, and let one go. The other night I thought he got a late start, which had him kind of, trying to get the ball out of his hands because the clock was winding down. Yeah,
there might be a little something to that. I think just the Raptors overall, they didn't handle that last call it a few minutes of that game very well at all. There was a timeout that was kind of curious that Nick Nurse has taken some heat for. But as far as the last couple of plays there for Kawhi, there is something to that. I think he at this point he's trying to make sure he's setting up the best play, and that's where I kind of make him the equivalent to LeBron James. And I think what he wanted to make sure there was, we're going to get this shot and we're going to leave the Warriors with next to nothing left if there's anything else going on here, because we need to make sure we get this thing closed out.
Yep, a lot. And, you know, you looking at Kawhi thinking that he's not 100%. I mean, I know a lot of guys are banged up here, but do you still see, because he looked evident. It was evident that he was slowed down or something was wrong with him earlier. But is this Raptors team maybe worn down after a 7-game series with the Sixers?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. The playoffs are such a grind, and people always say, well, they get the extra days off, but those extra days off, they're needed. You talk to any NBA player who's been in the NBA Finals, and they talk about the intensity level of finals games is ratcheted up so far beyond what happens in the regular season, and then even what happens in the playoffs. It's just a completely different animal. And for a guy like Kawhi, he's obviously hurt. There's something going on. I don't know if it's that quad or if there's another issue caused from the quad problems that he's had, but he has really struggled at times, especially to create plays explosively. That's why you've seen him doing far more jump shots and fallaways, fadeaways, things like that, versus getting all the way to the rim. I just don't know that he has explosion and power to get there right now.
Keith, obviously Durant, the stories that come off of him now, how this injury impacts free agency. There's a report out there that he's going to opt back in. We discussed this a little bit yesterday on the show that, everybody's wondering where he's going to go in free agency. He might not play at all next year. In fact, I can't imagine him playing. Boogie Cousins, got hurt right before the All-Star break last year, and he came back, in beginning of April. I can't imagine Durant being able to play at any stage next year. So is the smart move just to opt back into his Warriors contract?
There's definitely some of that out there. The sense is that for Kevin Durant, there's still going to be teams that are going to say, hey, we'll take it as a redshirt year. You go ahead and get healthy, and we'll get you signed here, and we'll pitch it as, maybe you make it back at some point this year. If you don't, that's fine. We'll have you fully ready to go the next year with what's likely to at that point be a 2 or 3 year deal. And that's where, you look at it now, those teams are taking a big risk, because if he doesn't make it back at the level he's at, you're going to have to commit a max contract to him to get him away from the Warriors. There's no one stealing Kevin Durant like DeMarcus Cousins was stolen this year by the Warriors. That's just not going to happen. It's a different cap environment, a different level of player. And then you run the risk of, now what happens if he misses an entire year and then he spends the next year or two not the same player? Now you have this max deal on your books for a 3 to 4 year period for a player who's clearly not at that level.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a team like the Knicks, though, are you desperate enough that you don't care about any of that?
Yeah, I think the Knicks are one of those franchises that would say, hey, it's worth the gamble on it because it can't get any worse than what it's been here over the last few years.
What about Kyrie? It looks like, and I know you're pretty close with the Celtics situation up there. It looks like he's going to opt out of a Celtics contract. But we talked about this yesterday, is he could be impacted the most by Durant if he opts out and ends up going to a team like the Knicks or Brooklyn and can't get Durant to go there with them. Now he's kind of stuck in a situation that's probably worse than Boston.
Yeah, there's definitely some thought around that. Now, Kyrie reports were today, I believe by The Athletic, that he is going to opt out. He's not going to return on that same deal. That's a non-news item. We all knew that. Kyrie himself said that before the start of the season, that there's almost no way he was going to opt in. It just doesn't make sense for him financially. But what you're seeing now is we've heard all the Brooklyn reports and the Knicks, and then you hear the Lakers. And it seems like every few days there's a different team that's now in the lead for him and he's intrigued by or he's interested in or whatever the case may be. And I think for Kyrie Irving, one of the things you have to look at too is if the Celtics were offering more money in more years, you might look at that and say, geez, I've had these problems in my career already with serious knee issues. And I've missed a significant amount of time. Now my buddy Kevin Durant is down and out. We don't really know what's going to become of him for the remainder of his career. Maybe my best thing is to re-sign in Boston, take that money. And it's the NBA. If he's unhappy a year or two from now, he just says, I don't want to be here anymore, trade me. And that's going to be the way it'll go. So it's going to be curious to see. Or, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Kyrie says, I'm packing up, I'm leaving town, I'm headed back home to the New York, New Jersey area with the Nets or the Knicks. it's Kyrie. So really, at this point, anybody who says that they know, I would question that because it's Kyrie Irving. I don't think anybody knows what he's thinking, including Kyrie himself.
How much has Kyrie's stock changed since what happened with Boston? I mean, is he now being looked at as, you know what, he's really the Batman. He can't be, the Robin. He can't be the Batman. I mean, he was the best player on this Celtics team, and they just, they never got out of the second round with him. And they did get out of the second round, but not with him.
Yeah, I think from the Celtics side, there's a sense that the plan was what it had always been, which was re-sign Kyrie and go get Anthony Davis. Now with these reports that came out today that Anthony Davis wants no part of Boston, it'll be a one-year deal, I think that really does change things, both for the Celtics and for Kyrie. Because if you're Kyrie, if Davis is holding true to that, which you can imagine at some point those two will have a conversation to say, all right, what is the real story here? What's your plan? If Davis holds true to that, then Kyrie has to look at it and say, well, now I'm kind of left here with just by myself. I don't know if I want to be in that situation. If you're the Celtics, you're looking at it and saying, that's an awful lot to give up. And then in consecutive years, what we could see is Kyrie walked away for nothing. We traded all of our good young assets in terms of players and picks for Davis. So we're without those now. And then Davis walks away. All of a sudden, now you're building from the ground up again if you're Boston. So it's a really complicated situation. And there's a growing belief that Boston may just walk away and say, you know what, we're going to head in a different direction with Kyrie or without, but we're not going to have Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's it's very interesting to see. And then Anthony Davis, of course, Rich Paul said today, I guess it was, or yesterday, that they could trade for him, but it's going to be for 1 year. It sounds like if the Celtics made a trade for Anthony Davis, that would be very risky. And there's reports that Davis either wants L.A. or New York at this point.
Yeah, that's what continues to be said. I think what you have happening here is the Pelicans issue or your report through whatever member of the media they're comfortable with that says, here's what we're looking at, here's what we want to do. Then Davis's camp counters with, that's all well and good, but we want L.A. or New York. We've seen that consistently. That'll continue to happen. Now, there's some belief that some feel that that's posturing by both sides, that everybody knows what the real story is here. But the Pelicans, they're under no obligation to do anything but what's best for them. They don't care if where he goes is for 1 year or not. That's up to the acquiring team to gauge that risk and make that deal. And then those teams are the ones who have to weigh that. There is still belief in the NBA because of what happened with Paul George. What is potentially happening with Kawhi Leonard is get a guy there, win a bunch, be really successful, prove to them what kind of organization you are, and you can change your mind. So there are definitely teams who subscribe to that theory and may see that all the way through.
Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports, NBA, Real GM, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, looking at the NBA Finals, NBA offseason, which, we are less than 10 days away from the draft, too, by the way. That is coming up next Thursday. Do you think that, we talked about Durant, do you think that there will be teams that would give him the max deal, even though they know he's not going to play? Do you think he will have a lot of options, or is it best for him just to kind of sit this one out, stay with the Warriors? Because the whole Warriors thing is interesting because it was like if he would have came back and won this series and was like the MVP in 3 games or whatever, I feel like the Warriors would almost couldn't allow him to leave. Like they would have to really come after him. But does he take a year off with the Warriors and maybe rethink about it to return to the Warriors?
Yeah, I think that is a possibility.
Like, is it a better opportunity for him to go back to the Warriors because he's not going to play next year? Is that basically what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that could be, and I think there's something to the idea of, hey, this happened under your watch. I'm going to rehab this on your dime, and you're going to pay me my $30+ million, and then then we'll figure it out a year from now. Maybe everything goes well with his rehab, and he's happy to be back. Maybe he heals faster than expected, and he's able to make an impact at some point next season. Cousins took about 11 months to get back on the court. Different body type, different size guy, little slower, little bigger, those kind of things. So maybe Durant can get back in 10 months and make an impact. But I think no matter who's getting him, to answer the first part of your question, 100% there are teams who will take that risk, the Knicks probably being chief among them. But what you have to do is you have to sell that as we're doing this as a long-term thing, not just an immediate thing. Because in the immediate, you're not going to have them for 3 quarters to more likely the entirety of next season.
All right, we'll leave with this because I think it's the juiciest of all. Your hypothesis on why Nick Nurse was calling timeout during maybe the Raptors' greatest stretch of basketball in their entire brilliant playoff run.
Yeah, so there's two pieces here. The first is that was his use it or lose it timeout. He was going to lose that timeout at the 3-minute mark. Now, whether or not you say then lose it, who cares? That's fine. I don't have any argument with that. But that what you are seeing increasingly around the NBA, right? It's the old joke of, the coach is on his deathbed screaming, but I've got timeouts left. They always use them. And I think what you look at with Nick Nurse is I think what his idea was, well, this is my use it or lose it, so I'm going to use it. I think he had a sense, too, that his guys are getting a little winded despite having made the great run. And I think what he wanted to do was settle everything down and then drop a play for the knockout punch. That was really, this is it. We're putting them away right here. That didn't happen. And what the flip side was is the Warriors got the chance to regroup and go at it. So that's really tough. And, he's taking heat then for not calling a timeout at the very end of the game. And that's one of those things where coaches kind of, I tend to trust the coaches here. They have the best feel for their team and situation better than the rest of us do. And I want to always put the faith in that they're making what they believe to be the right call. There's no way you're just calling it, well, because I'm going to lose it, I might as well call this timeout anyway. There was a plan in mind. It just didn't get executed.
All right, NBA Finals Game 6 tomorrow night, 97.3 ESPN. You can hear the action right here. And if there is a Game 7, we'll have it for you on Sunday night, Father's Day. And Keith Smith, follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA from Yahoo Sports, Real GM. Always right here on the Sports Bash. So next week at this time, we will have an NBA champion. We'll put a bow on the NBA season. And then the next day will be the NBA draft, and we will dive into that. And then the offseason will officially be here. Keith, always a pleasure, pal.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.